Part 32. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 311. Oops. After being healed, Zhang Yang was shocked and his injuries healed quickly, but Lu Xiaoqi felt a thump in her heart. He didn't expect that the special effects of the skills released after wearing the purple soul ring would be so cool. This completely exposed his position. Originally, the sound of the fort was enough to attract attention, but now it has added its own dazzling light effect. It's hard not to be in the spotlight. It seemed that he had to fight quickly, resolve the battle immediately, and then leave this place of right and wrong quickly. Having exposed their position, I believe that many people must have rushed towards this fighting position. If they had retreated a step later, they would probably have been blocked here and a group fight would have taken place. Thinking of this, Lu Xiaoqi became even more angry at the guy who fired the gun on the fort. He shouted, "You stay here and hide, I will take care of them." Then he jumped up and ran toward the fort at extremely fast speeds. The enemies on the fort naturally noticed Lu Xiaoqi's movements, but they didn't take it seriously and continued to fill up the pills leisurely. Although the change in light effects caused by Lu Xiaoqi just now really shocked them, but after looking at the results, they realized that it was some kind of auxiliary skill from the opponent. With my cannon in hand, even if they add buffs and hold more shells, they can still beat me. Will the gunpowder in it explode even more? This fort has a firing range of 3,000 yards, is extremely powerful, and is condescending. It can be said that it has the right time and place in its hands. How can it be afraid of an unarmed man approaching? Lu Xiaoqi had only walked 2/3 of the distance when the opponent's cannon was already loaded. The leader smiled coldly, pointed the muzzle at Lu Xiaoqi who was coming straight, and said cruelly, "Fire! Fire!" Boom, gunpowder exploded, and powerful ammunition sprayed out. Although they haven't hit the enemy yet, several people have already imagined in their minds the scene of the fool being blown to pieces by the cannonball. Then the ideal is very plump, but the reality is very skinny. The angle calculated by the leader was quite accurate. The cannonball encountered Lu Xiaoqi without any accident, but to everyone's surprise, the two passed by each other without any collision at all. Boom, the shell landed behind Lu Xiaoqi, creating a deep crater in the soil, and the worried exclamations of his teammates behind him reached Lu Xiaoqi's ears. "Careful!" What? These birdmen didn't understand why the shell passed through Lu Xiaoqi and hit something behind, but had no impact on Lu Xiaoqi. But they panicked because Lu Xiaoqi was approaching. They began to hurriedly load ammunition, and the remaining few people also took out their weapons and stood around the fort to prepare for defense. Only Lu Xiaoqi smiled coldly. Laughing to death, if I activate the wind form of 4 poles and get hit by you with such a vulgar weapon, I might as well stop participating in any adventurer competition and just buy a lactone tofu and be hit to death. He glanced around, and suddenly his eyes lit up. He was clearly approaching the base of the fort, but he suddenly braked and stopped next to a sapling as tall as a person. This sapling is straight and the trunk is as thick as the palm of your hand. There are no side branches except the top. Lu Xiaoqi made some gestures and was quite satisfied with the tree pole. He stretched out his hand to hold the sapling, and performed for everyone on the spot Lu Xiaoqi pulling up the sapling upside down. With just a slight force, he uprooted the entire small tree. He shook the soil on it carelessly, raised his palm into a knife, and chopped off the head and tail. Sapling, I was torn into pieces. What is he doing? I don't know. Several people on the fort looked at each other, confused. But they don't care about this anymore, because the next shell has already been filled. They quickly adjusted the angle of the cannon and aimed it at Lu Xiaoqi, who was still tinkering with the tree trunk. Everything was ready. At this time, Lu Xiaoqi weighed the straight tree pole in his hand and showed a satisfied smile. Every boy has a straight stick in his heart, and Lu Xiaoqi is no exception. Obviously, this tree trunk is his ideal type. So he held the tree trunk, raised his head and cast his gaze on the towering fort, slightly raised the corners of his mouth, and assumed a perfect throwing posture. Here comes the little flying stick. At the same time, the fuse was also pulled on the fort. Fire. Boom. The slightly red muzzle fired rapid ammunition. Luzioki's tree trunk also turned into several black shadows and came out. Duin. Everyone on the stage looked at the scene with wide eyes, in disbelief. The moment the cannonball came into contact with one of the tree trunks, all the huge kinetic energy contained in it disappeared, turning into a heavy iron lump and falling down. The tree trunks that offset the cannonball slowly turned into ashes and disappeared. But the remaining tree trunks still shot towards the fort like sharp arrows. No. To be precise, it has become faster and faster. Boom. The tree trunk fell on the fort, and a huge explosion occurred. Several enemies on the stage who had no time to dodge were directly blown into corpse and fell to the ground. With just one blow, the enemy on the fort was declared wiped out. This power doesn't look like a wooden stick. Even if it is said to be a missile, some people believe it. This is the result of Luzioki's recent practice. He attached the effect of the skill forced vibration to the tree trunk, allowing it to perfectly absorb the power of the cannonball, which resulted in the above scene. Yes, Luzioki can now initially perform skills without being rigidly formal, and can change the form and release conditions of skills to a certain extent. The tree trunk that he added forced vibration also gained the original heaven-defying effect of the skill. In other words, no matter where Luzioki threw the tree trunk, the shells they fired would collide with it. Then all the kinetic energy is absorbed by the tree trunk and converted into its own power, and it attacks the enemy. In conjunction with Luzioki's passive ability everything is allowed, the power of a tree trunk was copied into several copies and shot towards the opponent at the same time. The huge explosion power enveloped the entire fort, leaving the enemy with nowhere to hide and had no choice but to hit GG. After quickly dealing with the enemy, Luzioki didn't even bother to lick the bag, and directly called his teammates to leave this place of right and wrong. Sure enough, not far after they quietly slipped out, they heard the crackling sound of fighting coming from the place they had just left. It seemed that more than two teams encountered each other at the fort. Naturally, everyone has a peep at the magic weapon on this fort. Based on the idea that even if they couldn't use it themselves, they would never leave it to the other party. Several teams fought together and had a chaotic battle. And the sound of their fighting attracted more teams to join the battle. Soon, the situation on the field became uncontrollable. More than a dozen teams were involved, fighting to the death. Everyone wants to be an Oriole, but every team is a mantis. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 312. Seeing that the situation was becoming increasingly uncontrollable, Luzioki, who sensed what was happening, thought for a moment and led his team members back to the edge of the battlefield in a circle. In the center of the battlefield, dozens of adventurers were coming and going, fighting fiercely, and the situation was very anxious. Everyone wants to seize the opportunity to climb up the fort and occupy the upper and lower places, but as long as this tendency is revealed, the people next to him will immediately join forces to stop his actions. It really goes with the old saying, if one monk carries water to drink, and two monks carry water to drink, three monks will have no water to drink. This group of adventurers all wanted to be the monks who drank water, but the result was that no one benefited. Luzioki planned to wait until they were almost done fighting before going out to pick up the slack. However, you must not expose the existence of your team at this time, because there are many teams that have the same idea as him. Luzioki's senses scanned slightly and he discovered at least 3 teams hidden in various places. Luzioki's team was the farthest away, so they were not discovered by others. But as teams continued to arrive to join the battle, the scale of the battle continued to expand, and it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. At this time, the importance of Li Laban was reflected. After a period of previous training, his natural abilities have been developed to a whole new level. Now his ability to eliminate the sense of existence is not limited to himself. Several people held hands and Li Laban activated his ability to eliminate the presence of several people. Lu Xiaoqi and the others just lurked silently in the jungle, crawling quietly, but no matter who glanced at it, they would subconsciously ignore this jungle. Even the aftermath of the AoE emitted during the battle somehow avoided this land. This is the terrifying thing about Li Laban's ability reaching its extreme. It's a pity that using all his talents for a long time is also a great test for Li Laban. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoqi is by his side, and his magic power can greatly ease the burden of Li Laban's natural ability. It greatly extended the duration of his activation ability, so they dared to hide it blatantly in front of everyone's eyes. The high-intensity battle is destined not to last long. In just one stick of incense, more than a dozen teams fell. Now, other teams were not only jealous of the fort, but the piles of trophies under the fort were also full of temptations. After all, with so many teams, there will always be one or two gambling dogs who are betting on their lifespan, dangling in front of others with golden equipment. No, the first ones to fall were these adventurers with the best equipment. They were immediately killed by someone's fire. Now the shining golden equipment is lying on their carcasses. But no one dared to move. Because everyone knows that whoever moves first will die. Although the remaining teams are red-eyed, they have consumed a lot of energy due to the previous high-intensity battle. Now their skills are all at CD, their physical strength is exhausted, and they are listless. They keep shouting to kill, but their movements are slow. A lot. Seeing this situation, the team lurking around couldn't sit still. Several teams are on the verge of making a move. Do they know there are other teams hidden nearby? Of course they know. Although it is joked that victory comes in the end, but sometimes taking the lead can also lay the foundation for victory. Their current idea is to use the speed and cooperation of their own team to rush forward and level the crumbling empty shelves at the speed of lightning and jingle bells, and then grab the eye-catching trophies on the ground and run away. Even if you can't capture the fort, as long as you stay far away, when the fog shrinks, the fort will naturally be destroyed, and you who have obtained the treasure will become the biggest winner. In this regard, Lu Xiaoqi could only say that the idea was a good one. As for why, we'll find out as we look down. The first one who couldn't bear it was a team from Bangsa country. As for why, Lu Xiaoqi recognized them as adventurers from Bangsa country at a glance. Quite simply, because the kimchi smell they exude is so strong. Whether it's dressing up or dressing up, it tastes so pure. It is full of the flavor of copycat Dragon Kingdom costumes. Moreover, among so many teams, there is only one team from Bangsa country that represents their country in the competition. Can Lu Xiaoqi not be deeply impressed? This country, which shamelessly claims to be the birthplace of civilization in the universe, is indeed unsatisfactory when it comes to cultivating adventurers. In order to assemble a team that can participate in the global adventurer competition, they mobilized the whole country to formulate countless 10-year plans to achieve it. After 10 years of training, it is only possible to develop such a team that can be brought out to meet people. It's okay not to mention other crooked melons and cracked dates. Of course, you can't blame others for this. After all, the land is so large, even if it is put together, it cannot be regarded as a province of Dragon Kingdom. Their national team is only on par with the provincial team of Dragon Country. So Lu Xiaoqi can also understand. And this team is entrusted with the aspirations of the entire Bangsa country, and the pressure is not small. The extreme pressure not only did not transform them into the motivation to strive for progress, but instead developed a distorted outlook on their world of arrogance and arrogance. In their eyes, even Sun Yao experts are just like that. As long as the 5 of them attack together, even a god can kill you. Although this weird brain circuit is twisted, it does give them great confidence. So as the situation gradually became clearer, they were the first to be unable to bear it. Just listen to the leader standing up suddenly from the hiding place and shouting, "Victory belongs to us." Then he leaned over and raised his hips, preparing to charge into the battlefield. The next moment, there was a whoosh sound. The figure of the stick man disappeared. What stood up with him was a female stick man who looked very awkward. She was stunned immediately. "Is Han Shaiman and Appa so fast? I didn't even realize that he was gone? Could it be that he was hiding his strength during his usual training?" But before she could recover, she heard her teammates on the side scream, "Han Shaiman! You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 313. The female stickman followed the gaze of her teammates and realized that the stickman named Han Shaiman was not running so fast that he could not be seen. Instead, he was pinned to the huge rock by a huge arrow. His eyes were as wide as copper bells, but his body remained motionless. It looked like he was already GG. Female stick. Her legs were trembling, and before she could do anything, she heard a few and her teammates next to her made muffled grunts one after another. The female stickman turned her head and all her teammates disappeared. She turned around tremblingly. All her teammates were neatly nailed to the giant rock with arrows along with Han Shaiman. The female stick is stupid. Her face turned pale, as if she had been greatly frightened. Her face suddenly distorted, and she opened her mouth to scream at an astonishing decibel. Then I heard a cold female voice in the distance, shouting in a vicious tone, "Shut up." The female stickman was so frightened that she quickly covered her mouth with her hands, maybe because she was nervous and covered her mouth too hard. He covered his nose and tilted it to one side, and his already twisted expression suddenly became even more terrifying. No wonder Luzaoki always felt that the delicate face of this female stick was a bit weird and unnatural. It turned out to be all about technology and hard work. The female stick also realized something was wrong and quickly adjusted the position of her nose, but she couldn't restore it no matter what. Then she didn't get a chance to fiddle with her nose anymore, because a sharp arrow directly shot her head. The mosaics were scattered all over the floor, and the female stick fell down with the sound, her limbs twitching. In this regard, Luzaoki, who had seen all this, could only sigh, "If you are well, it will be sunny. If you are not well, then it will be a good journey." But what Luzaoki finds even more amazing is that even with such a fatal injury, wouldn't the adventurer's life be endangered in this barrier? If this is really the case, it can be compared with the resurrection effect of his holy guardian. Luzaoki was thoughtful. In just a moment, the newly emerged Bangsa country team was completely wiped out by the group, which made people sigh that they were worthy of being the elite of the Bangsa country. A giant in words, a coward in action. Despite this, their group destruction still had a huge impact. The several adventurers who were still fighting immediately stopped fighting, separated cautiously, and leaned together with their teammates, looking at the direction in which the arrows were coming. The one who took action was a petite woman, wearing tight leather armor, holding a huge bow as tall as a person, carrying arrows behind her back, and her short snow-white hair fluttering in the wind. Her gorgeous face was full of cold color. She stood proudly on a rock and stared at the separated teams below. Her red lips softly uttered a few words. "Leave or die. Leave or die." As she finished speaking, her teammates also appeared. A strong white man over 2 meters tall. The muscles all over his body were bulging. It felt like his arms were almost as big as Luzioki's head. He was holding a shield in his hand, and he looked a bit ferocious with his bare head. Next to the strong man is a swordsman with blonde hair. This man has a pair of charming blue eyes, a tall and slightly hooked nose, thin lips slightly pursed, and a thin figure standing upright. It was like a long sword fixed on the ground. Logically speaking, there should be 2 more teammates, but these are the only 3 who showed up. The remaining 2 people were missing. One of the team members loudly replied to the woman. To be precise, the body was fixed on the huge arrow on the rock. A faint green light glowed on his body, as if he had used some kind of defensive skill. Wooden piles spread directly from the ground and turned into a wooden wall blocking the front of the team. Luzioki didn't pay attention to the situation on the field at this time. The team on the field also became furious after hearing what the woman said. "That's why I don't show up." The other teams didn't say anything, they just clenched their weapons and looked like, "Come up and give it a try if you have the guts." But the woman didn't care. She bowed and shot gracefully, her movements flowing smoothly, and every posture was as classic as a textbook. So much so that the people of Bangsa country didn't realize that they were being attacked until they were pinned to the rock. Their faces were full of disbelief and fear, and they died in the struggle. The unique texture and strange structure on the arrow were obviously deliberately done to cater to women's archery techniques. "No way. I'm here fighting for life and death, sweating profusely. Why do you let us go as soon as we come, and let you get all the benefits?" With just one glance, he judged that the arrow was not an original product of the barrier, but a man-made prop. That's why arrows with such amazing effects can be produced. I don't know if they have been eliminated or if they are hiding in the dark and waiting for opportunities. Luzioki estimated that the latter was more likely. His attention was focused on the body of the Bangsa national team that was nailed to the rock. She just sneered, took out an arrow from the quiver on her back, and aimed it at the adventurer who shouted "No way" before. The woman loosened her fingers holding the arrow, and when the bowstring trembled, the arrow turned into a stream of light and went straight towards the wooden wall. The poor Bangsa national team came all the way here but could only be reduced to a backdrop to measure the opponent's combat power. What a shame. As for whether the specific situation was as he expected. After all, they only sent out 1 person, and he killed a team in seconds with a direct attack, which is enough to show the strength of the opponent. At the same time, it also blocks the archery woman's view. Similar to Liu Yang's robot. But people also have the ability to be arrogant. The crowd's reaction was not beyond the woman's expectations. After all, she was not the chosen one with a fox hidden in her body. She had no intention of winning effortlessly just by talking. Luzioki naturally didn't go to see this for no reason. This woman's team probably has a full-time logistics staff member. After all, it can be seen from the confident attitude of this team that they have not encountered any setbacks along the way, so they are so arrogant and stand up directly, intending to challenge all other teams as a team. Aim and shoot. Chirp. Be careful, this adventurer team was still a contestant from somewhere in the Dragon Kingdom. One of them knew that the woman was very good with bows and arrows, so he quickly shouted and flew in front of the man who had spoken before. In fact, he has realized it. That's why the arrow came so fast and silently. The next battle will tell him the answer. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 314. This arrow is completely different from the previous one. If the previous arrow was silent, it would be like an assassination arrow, like a ghost in the dark night. And now the arrow is a swift and bright blow that sounds like a bird's song. The moment the arrow met the wooden wall, a huge explosion sounded. Accompanied by the deafening explosion is the extremely exaggerated power. Zhang Yang had been hit by a cannonball before, and he almost didn't get killed even if he turned on his natural ability. But now this woman's careless arrow was as powerful as the shot Zhang Yang received. As if it were shattered, the wooden wall broke apart, and the several adventurers hiding behind the wooden wall were directly torn to pieces by the explosion. There was only a large, dark pit left in place, with traces of white smoke rising from it. A team that was able to persist to the end in the melee was just killed by a woman. Oh no! Not entirely. The man standing at the back was thrown away by the huge shockwave generated by the explosion because his teammates in front acted as a human shield for him. When he got up from the ground in a daze, he realized that all the teammates he had been talking and laughing with had disappeared. He was stunned for a moment, his eyes suddenly became bloodshot, he stared at the archery woman, and roared, "I'll fight you." He rushed forward with the short staff in his hand. Lu Xiaoqi shook his head slightly and sighed, "This man is quite brave. It's a pity that my mind is not very clear." The reason why he was protected by his teammates at the end was not because he was a spellcasting adventurer and was much weaker than the others around him. This can be easily seen from the speed with which he rushes over. A spellcaster who was not good at melee combat rashly rushed forward to fight with others face to face. The results can be imagined. The archery woman ignored the man who was gritting his teeth and charging. She took out another arrow and slowly cocked it. Although they did not target any team, all the adventurers on the field were frightened and did not dare to act rashly. If the woman ignores this man, someone will naturally take care of him. The man holding the sword shook his head slightly and sighed, with a faint smile on his lips, as if he was complaining about something, and then jumped down. A sharp sword light flashed past, and the man who rushed in front of the three fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood with a wow sound, and a huge sword wound appeared in his waist and abdomen, almost cutting him in half. Even so, he remained silent and stared at the woman with a pair of murderous eyes. Lu Xiaoqi noticed that his lips were trembling slightly, as if he was saying something. The next moment, he keenly sensed that the energy around him suddenly became chaotic. The man's body swelled instantly, like a balloon that was inflated instantly, and then, boom! An explosion comparable to the woman's previous arrow spread. Although the power of this man's self-destruction was not small, because it was not concentrated enough, the damage caused was not that shocking. The strong man was not seriously injured, but his clothes were all reduced to fly ash, revealing his solid muscles, and the shield in his hand was also in pieces and could no longer be used. There are a few sporadic adventurers left, all because some members of the team were sacrificial in previous battles or left unwillingly. He was closest to the man when it exploded. Although he retreated as quickly as possible when he realized something was wrong, he was still seriously injured by the power of the explosion. Lu Xiaoqi was shocked. Several teams on the field got to know each other, and they all wanted to quit. It is precisely because of such warriors that the country in Lu Xiaoqi's original world was able to get back everything that belonged to it through the 8-year war of resistance despite falling behind everything. Only when she was sure that her team could handle the situation would she take action with confidence. Actually, I wanted to write such a scene as early as 77, but unfortunately there has never been a suitable plot, although it is 717 now, 10 days later than that day, and the writing is a bit reluctant, a bit forced into the drama but, I still want to say, pay tribute to the martyrs of the older generation. The team members still have a tacit understanding. They just looked at each other and exchanged a few words and quickly reached a consensus. They came here to get benefits. If they didn't get any benefits from a fight, but instead involved all of their own team, it wouldn't be so decent. But his spirit of daring to fight for his life still awes Lu Xiaoqi. One of the teams was the first to raise his hand to signal surrender, then faced the archery woman and slowly backed away. And it also adopted a relatively safe strategy of killing chickens to scare monkeys. The English plastic ones that are popular on the street, just take a look at them if you have any problems, Just spray them, you're welcome, manual doghead. There was no point in talking, so the woman directly raised her bow and launched an attack. It's better to save your life while there's nothing to lose now in order to achieve great things. The huge smoke and dust subsided, and the huge rock shattered on the ground. The man holding the sword was covered in blood and scarred and hid behind the strong man. They stared at the trophies glowing in various colors on the field. She managed to collect her emotions and said in a deep voice, "There's still time to leave now." With them as examples, the remaining team soon followed suit. It seemed like they would never let it go without a fight. The woman's expression became much calmer. I never thought that this person would actually use the method of death in this competitive place. Gritting his teeth, he still took a fighting stance towards the archery woman. He is the most unlucky. The strong man didn't take it seriously. He threw the shield on the ground and said something to the swordsman who was drinking medicine to heal his wounds. A huge shockwave was generated from the man's body, instantly swallowing up the swordsman in front of him, the archery woman standing on the rock behind him, and the strong man holding the shield. As for the woman, because she was protected by a strong man holding a shield, nothing happened, but her face looked a little ugly. The archery woman remained motionless and watched them leave without any hindrance. However, it did indeed dampen the momentum of this group of people, so that they no longer have the airs of being arrogant. The archery woman actually has a detection skill. She has already detected the status of everyone on the field before taking action. She also became cautious, because she realized that even if her team's strength was indeed amazing, if she was not careful, she could still capsize in front of everyone. But I didn't expect that everything was going well in the first place, but at the final moment, I almost fell over because of this stupid young man. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 315. As ruthless characters who can persevere to the end in a melee, the adventurers in these teams naturally have the best skills. And there are also some experienced adventurers who have prepared a backup plan for themselves from the beginning. This is their preparation for a comeback from adversity. It was precisely these preparations that gave them the confidence to stay and face the eager shooter team even when they were in poor condition. Similarly, these backhands also caused great trouble to the Sagittarius women's team. After all, when entering the barrier for the first time, everyone is standing on the same starting line. No one carries equipment. Whether they can pick up equipment that suits them depends on luck. In such a short period of time, even if the women's team has logistical support, its advantage over its opponents is very limited. Therefore, if the opponent really fights to the death, the archery women's team may not be able to get a good deal. I have to say that the competition rules changed by the organizer are truly a stroke of genius. Countless teams that relied on their own equipment and props to try to reach Oita were brought back to their original form. The foundation of this group of people is not solid, and most of their strength comes from powerful equipment and props. After entering the barrier, they did not get the appropriate props, and the result was that they were eliminated and were the first to be eliminated. After another fierce battle, except for some of the team who saw that the situation was not right and used various methods to escape, the remaining adventurers were all killed by the archery woman and were unfortunately eliminated. However, their struggle was not in vain. The arrows in the woman's quiver were empty, and the swordsman in the worst condition was seriously injured and lost one of his left arms. He was no longer as calm and graceful as before, with a gloomy and violent look on his face. After simply bandaging his mutilated arm with a strip of cloth, his eyes were fixed on the pile of trophies on the ground. The swordsman's condition is undoubtedly extremely poor. He must receive treatment to regain his fighting strength. But now that all the potions found on him have been exhausted, and all the potions from his teammates have been given to him, so he places his last hope on him. In the spoils of war, I hope to find something inside that can restore his injuries, preferably one that can reattach or repair his severed arm. After all, the feeling of being a one-armed man is not very pleasant. As he walked towards the trophy, the team hiding in the dark couldn't sit still. Among the teams present, apart from Luzioki and the others, the most powerful team is undoubtedly this team of shooters with powerful long-range attacks. And now is the moment when this team has experienced a series of hard battles and its strength has been greatly reduced. If they take the spoils, obtain supplies, and regain their strength, all the benefits on the field will basically have nothing to do with other teams. After all, no one is sure that they can defeat this team and at the same time keep the spoils from being taken away by others. However, none of the teams took action rashly. As a team that has survived until now, they don't want to become part of other people's trophies. They are waiting for the team that can't help but take action first to be the first bird. Sure enough, someone had already taken the lead. The moment the swordsman man bent down and stretched out his right hand to pick up the trophy on the ground, the archery woman was suddenly dazzled by a tiny ray of light. Her pupils shrank suddenly and she shouted sternly, "Watch out! Be careful!" But the words were still a step too late. Just as the swordsman was startled by her sudden words, he felt his remaining arm tighten suddenly, as if it was entangled with something. The hair on his body stood on end, but before he could react, a sharp pain came from his arm, making him cry out in pain. Ah! A stream of bright red blood spattered out, and the swordsman's only arm detached from his body and slowly fell to the ground. Among the three, he was the only one whose strength was severely damaged because he was missing an arm and the massive blood loss had made it difficult for him to concentrate. Therefore, the person who attacked him specially chose him to set a trap, and sure enough, he was sure to hit with one hit, completely losing his fighting power. At the same time, the strong man guarding the archery woman also let out a low roar. It seemed that he was taking advantage of the swordsman's assassination. The moment the strong man's attention was attracted, he fell into the enemy's trap. After careful observation, I discovered that there were dozens of silver threads as thin as hair on his body at some point. This delicate filament is extremely flexible and extremely difficult to detect. It can often approach the enemy silently. The only flaw is that it is slightly reflective in the sun, otherwise it will be completely flawless when used for assassination. The strong man roared and struggled, but he could not escape from the shackles of the thin thread. On the contrary, the more he struggled, the tighter the thread tightened, almost cutting through his skin and strangling into his flesh. Bonefold! Stop trying! A petite woman in black floated down from nowhere and stood slowly on the treetops at the edge of the field. She looked at the strong man with cold eyes and said proudly, "You can't get rid of it." Although everyone couldn't understand what she said, they could guess what she meant. She was dressed like a ninja, and Luzioki's voice sounded familiar to her. After thinking about it for a moment, he remembered the team that he had driven away in the dense forest. She originally wanted to say something else, but the archery woman didn't give her any chance. She turned over and bowed her bow. Although there was nothing in her quiver, she opened the empty string and produced a blue light arrow out of thin air. She aimed at the woman in black on the treetop and shot out. But the woman didn't panic at all and actually smiled. The next moment, the venue between the two people suddenly burst into smoke. In the smoke, three men in black, armed with weapons and dressed as ninjas like the woman, rushed out. One of the men in black scattered the light arrows fired by the archery woman with a single blow, while the other two men in black divided their forces. From the two sides, one quickly approached the archery woman, and the other raised his sword and stabbed at the strong man who was restrained and unable to move. The situation reversed almost instantly. At this moment, the strong man suddenly let out a fierce roar, which was as loud as thunder and deafening. The man in black who was attacking him was shouted in the right direction, and was immediately stunned and unable to move. At this moment, the muscles all over the strong man's body suddenly expanded, and his size increased by 1/3 in an instant. Hearing a series of crisp sounds like bang bang bang, The strong man was covered in blood, but he also used brute force to break free from the shackles of the thin wire. He originally wanted to turn back and join the archery woman, and the two of them would defend themselves against the enemy. But when he turned around, he was suddenly shocked. The moment the archery woman discovered that the light arrows she shot were scattered by others, she saw that there was nothing she could do and abandoned her companions without hesitation. She tapped her toes gently, and her whole body exuded a faint fluorescent light and quickly moved towards the target. The rear left the battlefield. So when the strong man turned around, the woman could hardly even see her shadow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 316. Your companion abandoned you. The woman in black on the treetop slowly landed, with a hint of pity in her tone, but more of a sarcasm. She looked at the strong man staying at the scene with a calm expression, as if he was not surprised by the situation. The three men in black on the field did not chase the escaping archery woman. Instead, they quietly retreated to protect the woman in black behind them. The strong man's momentum was a little sluggish, but then he roared, regained his composure, and rushed towards the woman in black with long strides. I have to say that although this strong man may not have high attack power, his defensive ability is really top-notch. He endured the attacks of the three men in black and kept approaching the woman in black. The woman in black did not dodge, she opened her eyes and watched quietly as the strong man approached her step by step. When he was within a short distance, the strong man roared angrily and stretched out his hands to grab the woman in black. Looking at the posture, it seems that he is going to give her a sister-in-arms killing. The woman in black calmly raised her hand and slowly snapped her fingers. In an instant, the strong man was once again restrained by countless thin threads, unable to move, and as the thin threads tightened, blood mist began to spurt out from his body. The next moment, the strong man could no longer resist the increasingly powerful entanglement of filaments, and a spooky sound sounded. The strong man was cut into pieces by thin threads and turned into several pieces on the spot. 5 stars for the level of gore. Obviously, the members of the Forbidden Top team have limited ability to accept such cruel and bloody scenes. Not only Lin Qingqing, but also Liu Yang, Li Leiban, and others turned pale and almost vomited. Lu Zioqi also raised his eyebrows, and the slightly twitching corners of his mouth showed his inner unrest at the moment. Even he has rarely seen such a terrifying scene. After all, after the monster dies, it turns into white light and disappears directly. Lu Zioqi killed the enemy before, but it was the result of no bones left, so naturally he couldn't see it. What a bloody scene. It's just that in his previous life, he had been baptized by countless horror films that were actually bloody massacre films, and his endurance was obviously higher than those of the people next to him. Although the current level of bloody violence is not as good as the mosaic-removed scenes from a certain country's blockbusters, one is just a movie viewing, while this one is an immersive experience, so the level of bloodiness has to be raised several notches. And with Lu Zioqi's current perception ability, he is indeed suffering a bit, because even if he closes his eyes, his keen perception will transmit the details of every drop of blood spatter to his brain. Needless to say, it's exciting. Besides, the book is gone. But the girl who had done such a cruel thing raised her head slightly with great enjoyment, letting the blood mist splashed by the strong man spray on her face. At the same time, all the filaments danced like living creatures and slowly began to shrink. So there was no fighting between the two teams. Because if his prediction was correct, there would be one person in this girl's team who didn't show up. This shows that although this girl is very attractive, it is obvious that the real person in charge of this team has not yet shown up. But instead, he glanced around with a provocative look and said loudly, "Come out." Before meeting this girl, it was hard for Luzaoki to imagine that someone's talent could change the structure of his body and turn him into a monster. It's just that those who have survived until now are all human beings, and they are not moved by her provocation at all, and they even want to laugh a little. How could he have such an abnormal talent? When the woman in black's hand was almost touching the trophy, she suddenly stopped, with a ferocious smile on her face, and said loudly, "Jun's plan is yours. You've fallen into the trap." Luzaoki took a deep breath. The remaining two were fighting against a ninja dressed in the same style as the girl in black. This kind of decision-making is something ordinary people don't have. Part of this girl's body. Because the filaments were stained with blood, Luzaoki could easily detect the traces of these filaments and judge that it was not some special prop or equipment as Luzaoki had guessed before. After all, he saw at that time that the forbidden top team with only two people, Zhang Yang and Luzaoki, was not easy to mess with and decisively chose to retreat to preserve their strength. A team not far away suddenly appeared, but three people were already lying on the ground. There was more caution on his face. When they met before, a hoarse male voice communicated with them in broken Chinese. Although the girl was dissatisfied with Luzaoki's attitude and even got angry, she was stopped in time. After a simple game, the girl after that, the other party chose to give up decisively and left. Because he watched the thin threads that strangled the strong man slowly follow the girl's exposed skin and enter a flesh hole in the lumbar spine of her back. When all the thin threads were recovered, the flesh hole also closed, leaving only fine marks that are invisible to the naked eye and are almost undetectable without looking carefully. If you don't come out, you won't have a chance. Although I couldn't understand her words, I could tell from her appearance that she was provoking the team who were still hiding and trying to fish in troubled waters. As soon as she finished speaking, before Luzaoki had time to figure out what she meant, he heard a scream suddenly coming from around him. But he who seemed to be his true form continued to form seals, and put his hands together to his mouth. The next moment, fierce flames spurted out. At this time, the girl smiled with satisfaction and said with a ferocious smile, "You have been discovered. Then I'll accept it politely. The most likely possibility is that this girl has awakened some special talent." After the girl finished dealing with the strong man, there were only 4 of them left in the apparent team, but she was not in a hurry to collect the trophies on the ground. The woman said, and then swaggered towards the trophy. Just like the man who had his arms cut off and lay on the ground pretending to be dead, he reached out to touch the golden trophy on the ground. Even though he fell to the ground and rolled several times, the flames on his body were still not extinguished. Although the man didn't know how strong he was, based on his vision, Luzaoki believed that he was not far behind. As expected of an adventurer from a country where he had a good life as a child. But this caution is not for girls. I saw him forming seals with his hands, and with a peng sound, he transformed into several clones, holding various weapons to kill the 2 people. The remaining 2 members of the team were entangled by the clones and did not rush to dodge. They were sprayed by the flames, their whole bodies were on fire, and they flew backwards screaming. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 317. The 5th member of this team finally appeared. Luzaoki relaxed a little, and then noticed that the new man in black who was suspected to be the leader seemed to be different from ordinary people. His whole body was wrapped tightly, and he was afraid of exposing any skin, except for a pair of dark eyes. And it was these eyes that made Luzaoki feel a little unusual. Because there are no whites in his eyes, only pure black, and in the center of the black, there are 2 small scarlet magatama-shaped dots that are constantly rotating. If you don't pay attention, you can't detect the existence of these 2 magatama. But if you look closely, watching it will make you dizzy and shudder. Luzaoki recalled for no reason a certain drama, Legend of the Eyes, that she had watched in her previous life. I knock. There really isn't such a thing as the Sheri-nan, right? Luzioki was a little shocked, and at the same time, she also had a crazy idea in her heart. He wanted to take the eye off and put it back in again. For no other reason than I just wanted to try out whether this thing is hot swappable. With an entire team discovered and then massacred, the other old coins can't stand it any longer. After all, they can't guarantee that they will be well hidden and will not be discovered by this team of lunatics. Instead of hiding in the dark and waiting to be killed, it is better to attack in groups. As for dividing the spoils afterwards, it depends on each family's ability. So one of the teams took the lead and shouted, "Everyone, do it together." It seems that he is also very powerful. Although he does not know which country's bird language he speaks, it is automatically translated into the language of the country when it reaches everyone's ears. I don't know if it's his talent or the ability of his skills. However, Luzioki felt that the most likely thing was some kind of special prop. With this function, it would be a pity not to do translation. Ahem, what I am talking about is Chien in a serious way. If you think wrongly, just face the wall. As that team took the lead and exposed its presence, several other teams also responded and jointly attacked the ninja team. But in Luzioki's perception, there was still a team that, like Luzioki, had not exposed himself, sitting firmly on the Diaotai, motionless. Luzioki sneered and refused to comment. The reason why he is stable is because he knows that his absolute strength is enough to crush everything. And why are these teams so stable? You have to ask them what they think. Anyway, Luzioki herself is not in a hurry. There was only one first place, and Luzioki didn't panic at all until everything was settled. The first man to be attacked was the man who appeared last. Let's call him the man with strange eyes. Everyone noticed the abnormality in his eyes and concluded that he might have some special detection ability and could find everyone's hidden location. Moreover, the combat power he displayed was also very exaggerated, as he completed the massacre of a team by himself. Although the previous archery woman also achieved this, it was obvious that she relied on the strength of the weapon. You see, once the arrows in her quiver are exhausted, she immediately becomes intimidated and retreats immediately when she sees that nothing can be done. From this point of view, the terrifying nature of this strange-eyed man is revealed. Everyone also knew this clearly. If they left the man alone, even now they would have won by relying on their numbers. Once this strange-eyed man successfully escapes with his tyrannical strength, what they will face in the following time will be a nightmare. Everyone knows how terrifying it is to face an enemy who is elusive, can detect the location of other people's teams, and is incredibly powerful. The next person who received the most attention was the arrogant woman in black. Let's call her Zaci girl here. Her abilities were too weird and she was feared by everyone. However, although her filaments are also terrifying, they are not very powerful. At least they cannot directly kill a group of people instantly, and there should be considerable distance restrictions. From her battle with the strong man, it can be seen that when the distance is a little farther, her control of the filaments is not so fine, and the power is not so terrible. Only when the strong man is close to the woman, the full power of the filaments can be exerted. Play it out. The reason for this fluctuation is the power of laws that are familiar yet unfamiliar to Luzioki. Everyone turned around and realized that the strange-eyed man had moved dozens of meters out of thin air and appeared in front of the thin silk girl. Sure enough, the moment before countless attacks were about to fall. The man with strange eyes suddenly drew his sword. Seeing that countless attacks were about to hit him, the strange-eyed man's hands turned into after-images, seemingly forming countless hand seals in an instant. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I did it on purpose. But the people in the ninja team seemed very calm. On the contrary, his expression became cautious. And in his hand, there was an inexplicable sheath knife. Because just now, he noticed unusual energy fluctuations. Don't overestimate your capabilities. A dark and long knife mark stayed in the air, as if the weird-eyed man's stunning knife tore through the space. Looking at the shape of the knife, it's obviously the favorite Tachi from a country that had a good life as a child. This weird knife mark exudes amazing suction power. He actually tried to resist the attacks launched by everyone on his own. All attacks launched against him failed. Many people even chose a large-scale attack, including their temporarily formed teammates. Everyone showed their true skills and planned to kill the thin silk girl and the strange-eyed man in one fell swoop. Almost everyone who saw the scene sneered. The adventurers who were affected naturally started to curse, and the scene suddenly became extremely chaotic, filled with yells and curses characteristic of various countries. Targeting this kind of player is very simple, just use long-range attacks. If you don't take action, it will be fine. Once you take action, it will be earth-shattering. Disappeared. Everyone was stunned. The next moment there was a bang, and the whole person exploded into a ball of smoke and disappeared out of thin air. All attacks launched in this direction were deflected and sent into the knife scars to be mercilessly devoured. Here, someone shouted. Luzaoki didn't laugh either. The light of the sword disappeared in a flash. Even the thin silk girl who was the target of the attack was not afraid at all. She seemed to be convinced that the strange-eyed man could successfully intercept the attack in front of her. There are also smart people among so many adventurers. They quickly figured out their ideas and started to act in a planned way. Faced with everyone's attacks, the ninja team didn't panic at all. Everyone was stunned. The strange-eyed man held the scabbard in one hand and held the handle tightly with the other hand. Facing the overwhelming attack that was originally intended to be a long-range attack on the thin silk woman, he leaned down slightly and assumed an IAI posture. Their evil intentions were exposed. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 318. Jaw-dropping. Everyone was dumbfounded watching this scene. They never expected that they would use their special skills to perform their lifelong stunts, but this strange-eyed man would easily crack it. It only took one knife. But this is just the beginning. Because the Megatama in the strange-eyed man's eyes spun faster, the next moment he held the Tachi blade in his hand with his backhand. Regardless of his hand being scratched by the sharp blade and dripping with blood, a hoarse voice spat out from his mouth. Yod. Jade broken. The next moment, the sword in his hand instantly shattered into countless broken blades. As the blade shattered, the space behind him also cracked with countless dark holes, as if dozens of mouths suddenly opened in the space. These mouths are completely different from the knife marks made by the strange-eyed man in the air before, but they are connected to each other. The reason why I say this. It's because, at the next moment, all the long-range attacks that had been swallowed up by the knife marks were all sprayed out from the mouth. These attacks went straight towards all the adventurers present who had attacked them. Almost everyone was dumbfounded instantly. But they didn't have time to be dazed, because the next moment, all the attacks returned the same way, hitting the adventurer who had cast the spell crying for his father and mother. Only Luzaoki, who was hiding in the dark, had a strange look on his face. No wonder he felt that the power of rules that this man had just activated was somewhat familiar. The trick used by this strange-eyed man is obviously somewhat similar to his forced vibration knife. However, each has its own advantages and disadvantages. In comparison, Luzaoki still feels that his forced vibration sword is superior. However, he and the strange-eyed man have obviously taken a step further in this skill and have realized the power of the relevant rules. So who has stronger skills depends on who understands the power of the rules more powerfully. But then again, this team that has been living a good life is indeed very powerful. In the same grade and level, others have already understood the rules, but Luzaoki's teammates can only look at Luzaoki eagerly and ask, Xiaoqi, what should we do next? Gap. This is the difference. Luzaoki was still thinking wildly here, but the ninja team on the field had already started killing everyone. The strange-eyed man's unexpected skill completely turned the entire team's unfavorable situation around. The adventurers who were attacking them now were beaten to the point of crying for their fathers and mothers by their own attacks, and their positions were in disarray. However, Zesinu and 3 other teammates took the opportunity to take action, first using smoke to interfere with their vision, and then began to kill wantonly. During this period, it was not that there were no adventurers trying to organize the situation and regroup, but the teams on the scene all came from different countries, and they could not communicate with each other because they could not speak the same language. There was originally an adventurer with translation ability on the scene. If he had survived, he could still have tried. It's a pity that after he said the first sentence, he was targeted by the thin silk girl. The elusive filaments tore him apart directly. Without the only adventurer who could translate the language to join other teams, this joint policy completely failed. Many teams saw that the situation was not good and quickly prepared to escape. But the next moment, he was hit by a huge shockwave and flew back vomiting blood. Yeah. Gu-Ri-kun is really in a sorry state. He is indeed a pervert, even his preferences are so different. And behind him are all girls in Cheongsam. I thought you didn't plan to come out, Mr. Han. An adventurer from the Dragon Kingdom slammed his bloody hands on the invisible wall several times, but the wall didn't move at all. He couldn't suppress the fear in his heart and cried out in collapse. It just took a little time to set up this formation. Moreover, I specially prepared a gift for Miss Shasha. All turned into part of the loot on the ground. The thin silk girl's eyes lit up, she smiled and bowed, "Thank you, Mr. Han, I like this gift very much." With the emergence of this team, the situation on the field has become very clear. The leader was a man wearing a windbreaker and a string of extremely exaggerated earrings. The two teams cooperated internally and externally, not only killing the team that couldn't bear to jump out, but even the teams that had been observing in secret could not escape their poisonous hands. Bad news, he is not with the other teams, he is helping the ninja team who are living a good life. The man with strange eyes once again spoke the Chinese language with a hoarse voice. Looking at the ferocious and frightened expression, it was clearly the shooter woman who had abandoned her teammates and fled. The person from the Dragon Kingdom who spoke was in the same team as the adventurer who was separated by the filaments before. It could be seen from their clothes. The faces of this mysterious team were also revealed in front of everyone. As he spoke, he clapped his hands, and the expressionless girl behind him silently held up one. How could it be possible? We are the closest friends, the earring man laughed. Facing the obstruction of the invisible wall, the ninja team was obviously well prepared, so they did not panic at all and slowly slaughtered the adventurers present who had lost their fighting spirit. He gritted his teeth and charged towards the ninja team while brandishing his giant sword. These girls had expressionless faces, like dolls, standing silently behind the men. Seeing that they could not escape, the remaining adventurers gathered together spontaneously. Facing the ninja team that was approaching step by step, a trace of cruelty appeared on their faces. Fight them. The good news is that the person speaking is from the Dragon Kingdom and has this very standard Dragon Kingdom language. What is this stuff? Lu Zioki cursed in her heart. At that time, like Lu Zioki's team, the team that had been hidden and never appeared finally appeared on the scene. The next moment, a thin thread wrapped around his neck. With the appearance of this team, the hearts of all the adventurers on the field could not help but sink into their stomachs. Ahead. Suddenly, a strong wind blew away all the smoke from the smoke bombs thrown by the ninja team on the battlefield. One team made a head-on appearance to attract everyone's attention, while the other team took the opportunity to block the area, trapping everyone in it, and creating a trap. It turns out that these two teams have colluded together for a long time. But something unexpected happened to everyone. No matter which direction these adventurers tried to escape from the battlefield, they were eventually blocked by an invisible wall. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 319. As the adventurer from the last team on the field screamed and fell down, blood flowed on the gravel-filled ground. The field was filled with a strong smell of blood, and the leaves of many plants were stained with scarlet color. The man with earrings who appeared last was still handsome, but the girl standing behind him seemed to be bathed in a rain of blood. Her whole body seemed to be soaked in blood, with blood stains everywhere. This is because their attack methods are too cruel. It seemed that all of them were beautiful girls, but in the end they turned out to be extremely violent. 4 people swarmed up and grabbed the girl alive and tore her into pieces. Moreover, their physiques seemed to be a bit strange. They seem to be extremely immune to the skill attacks launched by others, and their bodies do not falter at all even when they resist other people's ultimate moves. Even the corners of his clothes were not damaged at all. What's more, the 4 people seemed to have a good understanding of each other, and they worked together seamlessly. When the 4 of them attack together, the combat power they unleash is stronger than the entire team. Plus Ninja Sentai. The 2 teams quickly swept the field. The man with earrings didn't even take action. Until no more teams could be seen standing on the scene, the sea girl took a breath of the bloody air with great enjoyment and said with a smile, "Then it's time to clean up the battlefield." As she spoke, she walked towards the glittering trophy unsuspectingly, and asked as she walked, "Jun-han, what equipment do you need?" "There's no hurry," the man with earrings laughed, and slowly walked to the man with strange eyes and said, "There are still some things that need to be discussed with Mr. Gu-ri, about." Before he finished speaking, the man with the earrings suddenly took action, turned his palm into a knife, and stabbed the man with the weird eyes in the chest. The man with strange eyes seemed to be on guard, but as if his body was suppressed by an invisible force, he still couldn't escape the chest attack of the man with earrings. Just listen to Puff. Blood spattered, and while the rest of the ninja team looked on in shock, the man with the earrings smiled and took out the still beating heart of the man with strange eyes. He slowly handed it to the expressionless girl behind him, and quietly told, "Keep it for me." "Damn it. Really speaking from the bottom of my heart." Luzioki was also shocked when she saw this scene, and complained fiercely in her heart. Although he also thought that the 2 teams might fight due to the uneven distribution of the spoils, he did not expect that the ear-stud man would be so ruthless. "As soon as you come up, you'll dig into people's hearts." Yes, he is a ruthless person. Originally, he was thinking about how he should appear if the 2 sides did not fight. Well now, there's another good show to watch. Luzioki was a little gloating. One side is a team that had a good life, and the other is a traitor team that got mixed up with the team that had a good life. No matter who wins or loses, this is very interesting to watch. It would be best to fight to the death together and let their Forbidden Peak team take advantage directly. After this heart-wrenching famous scene occurred, the atmosphere on the scene solidified instantly, and the entire audience fell silent. But soon, the girl's scream broke the silence. "Guri-kun!" The strange-eyed man whose heart had been ripped out could not stop his blood from gushing out. His original dark eyes also degenerated into those of a normal person. His mask moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he still lost it because of his loss. After losing strength, he knelt down without saying a word and slowly lay on the ground. The filament girl's eyes instantly turned red. She stared at the earring man who took out his silk scarf and slowly wiped the blood on his hands. The flesh hole on her back quietly expanded, and countless filaments twisted wantonly and drilled out of her body. "Come out." Although she didn't say a word, everyone could feel her uncontrollable killing intent. The remaining 3 ninjas seemed to have just reacted to the incident, and raised their weapons to kill the man with the earrings. But the row of girls behind him was not a vegetarian, and they stopped everyone one-on-one. The man with earrings calmly tidied up his appearance, then smiled and said, "Miss Shasha, I'm sorry, I think I can take enough of the spoils in this game. If the two teams are divided, it will seem a bit small. So, you'd better withdraw from the competition with peace of mind." Sinai. The girl did not speak. The xenia above was the dubbing that Luzioki silently added for her. She just separated dozens more strands of filaments, and then hung up the girl who blocked her. The thin threads became tighter and tighter, and it seemed that the expressionless girl was about to follow in the footsteps of the strong man before. The other girls got rid of their opponents and went to help. But the filaments of the thin silk girl were surprisingly tough. No matter how hard these three no girls chopped it, there was nothing they could do with it. At this time, Luzioki's pupils shrank and he discovered an astonishing scene. The thin threads had been cut into the girl's skin, but Luzioki's excellent perception ability discovered that these girls were not human. Oh, this is not a curse from Mr. Lu. But literally. Because what the girl shed was not blood, but a purple turbid liquid. This strange liquid didn't feel like some kind of blood to Luzioki at all, but rather like an oil with a strange color. Moreover, under the girl's skin, there are not flesh and bones, but instead, metal bones that exude a faint luster? Good guy. You are playing T800 over here. Luzioki obviously felt that Liu Yang was also aware of this scene. Because his breathing was obviously a little faster. This is a wonderful physiological reaction that a fanatic who plays with machinery will have when he meets his peer. But what Luzioki admires most is his superb simulation ability. Before the skin of the girl robot was cut by the filaments, Luzioki had always thought of her as a living person. At most, he felt a little strange about her expressionless face at all times. With Luzioki's current perception, she shouldn't make such a mistake. The only explanation is that in addition to technology and ruthless work, this girl robot also has the power of magic applied to it. It was this power that made her look just like a normal human being, so she was able to hide it from Luzioki's perception. Oh, no, it should be said that he hid the enchantment, successfully smuggled across the sea, and hid his secret from the world. After all, this robot is not even a human being, but a prop at most. How can it follow this man with earrings into the barrier to participate in the competition? So, let's just say we can directly report him for cheating in the game? Luzioki thought about it, and her eyes suddenly lit up. Great. Just do it. If this stud-eared man is lucky enough to defeat the ninja team, we will backhand with the report and let him be eliminated directly, and then the forbidden top team will win all the trophies on the field without any blood. Delightful. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 320. Facing the mechanical girl with a metal skeleton, the shortcomings of the thin silk girl were exposed. Although her filaments are weird, her attack power is a bit weak when faced with such an inhuman existence. Although one of the mechanical girls had been successfully restrained by being hoisted up, they were unable to do anything to the other girl. Instead, the other mechanical girls took the opportunity to surround her and beat her until she could only parry for a moment. On the other side, the remaining three members of the ninja team did not turn around to help Zasinu, perhaps because they had great trust in her combat power. They chose to bravely rush towards the man with earrings. It seems that he wants to avenge the strange-eyed man who refused to die. It's a pity that the man with earrings can easily kill the guarded man with weird eyes, so he obviously won't be an easy character to get along with. Facing the attacking people, he remained calm and dodged slightly to avoid the combined attack of the three of them. And he stretched out his hand and gently twisted it, and snatched the weapon of one of the men in black. With the stabbing blade in his hand, his combat power soared even more. With one wrong move, one of the men in black was seriously injured, and he fell to the ground covered in blood. The remaining two people were so frightened that they immediately threw smoke bombs to hide their traces. It's a pity that the stealth method is too inferior and is obviously useless against the man with earrings. He just closed his eyes, listened slightly, and easily determined the location of the two people through the subtle sounds. Then he jumped gently into the mist. An inhuman massacre began. But in just a few breaths, the fog was blown away by the wind, and the remaining two men in black turned into two innocent souls at the feet of the man with earrings. In the blink of an eye, the only one left in the ninja team was the girl named Zasi. Luzaoki also had to praise the man with the earrings for his strength, ruthlessness, and thoughtfulness. It was obvious that he had clearly seen the strength of everyone in the ninja team while hiding in the dark. Except for the strange-eyed man who was a bit of a threat to him because of his outstanding intelligence and ability, the rest of the people were nothing to worry about. So he used some means to directly kill the strange-eyed man instantly, and created an information gap. He used the girl with a mechanical body to entangle the opponent's more difficult thin silk girl, and he methodically killed the remaining three little Karami. Pack it away. Finally formed the current situation. Whether it's 5 versus 1 or whether it's a will battle that consumes the opponent's physical strength, he is sure of victory. This battle started with the team on the fort shelling the team on the top of the Forbidden City. The situation was ever-changing. Dozens of teams were involved in the battle. The person who can calmly plan in such a situation and finally achieve such brilliant results is truly remarkable. But the more amazing this kind of person is, the harder it is to keep him. After all, this person already has the tendency to be a traitor. Luzaoki couldn't help but curl her lips when she thought of this. But no matter how treacherous you are, you still want to drink the foot-washing water from me, Mr. Liu. Compared to Mr. Liu, who is nicknamed Living Kongming, you are still a bit inferior. The important moment came when the mechanical girl repeatedly attacked and beat the thin silk girl, panting and unable to resist. Suddenly someone jumped out from the haystack nearby and pointed at the earring man Yang Tian and shouted, "I reported him for violating the competition rules." His loud voice echoed across the empty field. The man with earrings was shocked. He really didn't expect that there were other teams on the scene at this time, and they dared to jump out. The most important thing is that neither the strange-eyed man nor himself discovered the existence of this team. Luzaoki was also stunned. Damn it! Someone actually stole my lines. He wanted to jump out and point at the other person's nose and scold him. Sit down. Take back everything you just said. Let me tell you. Unfortunately, this idea was still swirling in his mind and he had not put it into practice. Then new changes appeared on the scene. This competition is the focus of the world, and 9 Sun Yao experts are invited to serve as judges. How could you not pay attention to such a big movement in the barrier? What's more, the person who jumped out also mentioned sensitive words such as match violation and report. Almost instantly, the voice of a Sun Yao expert came down from the sky above the barrier. I am William. After our verification, the player you reported did not violate any rules. The report will not be accepted. William is a strong man in the United States. Although he spoke in the language of birds, with the blessing of some mysterious power, everyone clearly understood the meaning of each of his words. After understanding what he meant, the person who reported the report changed his expression instantly and shouted, "This is impossible. This is impossible." But as a Sun Yao strongman, and under the joint gaze of 9 Sun Yao strongmen, in front of the adventurers all over the world paying attention to this competition, it is obviously impossible for William to help the earring man cheat. That means one thing, this man with earrings really didn't cheat. That. Luzaoki's expression suddenly changed. He looked at the mechanical girls who were covered in injuries and still remained indifferent, with a different meaning in their eyes. Tisk, the man with earrings sneered, looking at the guy who suddenly appeared as if he were looking at a clown. But after this, he had no intention of playing anymore. he directly threw the stabbing blade he had just captured from the man in black in his hand. The exhausted Zasi woman couldn't dodge, and with a groan, her body was pierced by the speeding thorn blade, and she was nailed to the ground. And the thin threads she controlled also shrank and returned to the thin silk girl's body. It seemed like she didn't have the strength to keep going any longer. Then the four tattered mechanical girls and the man with earrings simultaneously turned their attention to the man who came out to report him. This man had blue eyes and golden eyes, and looked like a European. Facing the oppressive gaze of the man with earrings, he swallowed hard and shouted, "Help!" When he shouted, the man with the earrings immediately looked stern and became alert. "Oh shit!" From another haystack, a strong man holding a giant axe suddenly jumped out and began to frantically attack the man who had reported the crime before, constantly greeting his relatives and friends. At the same time, people jumped out of the third haystack, the fourth haystack, and the fifth haystack.